All right. Well, we're going to get back onto the subject of the album Control. And this was the 4th single. Don't you miss when albums had so many singles?
There were 7 singles from this album, ultimately. Isn't that insane?
I love it when you read a track list, you're
7.
like, these were all singles.
This
was the 4th single, came out on October 17th, 1986. Yeah. It's actually track number 1 on the album.
Right.
And I believe you've got some parts to play.
You know what I've got right here? I've got the stems.
Yes, sir.
So let's listen to them. So the beats on Control. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, we were talking about Minneapolis, the Minneapolis sound. Something was happening in that moment in music. And with I guess, funk and electronic funk, or boogie maybe is a better way to put it, with how in the bass lines and everything. But drum machines, there was almost a separation in what the kick and snare were doing and what the hi-hats were doing. It almost sounded like 2 different performances, because you'd have these crazy like 30-second note, like it's almost like what drill or trap would be now with the hi-hats. So I'm gonna play the beat, and another thing about this song, which is unique about on the album, is that 13 of the 24 tracks are percussion and rhythm and drums. So a lot going on here rhythmically. I really want to get into that with you. But let's listen first, and we'll build it starting from the ground up. I love that clap by itself. So satisfying.
That's the, you know, the...
Yeah, that giant reverb.
That became LA and Babyface's... trademark.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, they did. I remember asking them about that, and they said, "Oh yeah, we got that from Control."
Yeah, we took that from you.
Yeah,
we got
totally.
that from this.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna build now. We got another layer going on top of that.
Is that cowbell?
Cowbell.
I'll play it by itself because it's fun to hear that the high stuff there. Well, tambourine in there too. Snap.
Yep.
And then last we have,
funky.
It's so funky, but it's 13 things. And then we have bongos, percussion, some more toms.
The ping and zing track, as we call it.
Okay, and I'm gonna build it back. So I feel like you had a lot of fun building this track. Is this a Lindrum situation?
Lindrum situation.
Okay, and talk about the day you made the beat, or if you can remember, like, kind of what was going through your mind as you were making this.
Well, the funny thing is we still have the drum machine that all that stuff was done on. I mean, we have all this, we still have everything that all this stuff was done on. And I looked at that machine the other day, yesterday as a matter of fact, and it looks like a different machine to me than it looked, you know, almost 40 years ago. Like it's a different thing, because a lot of it was, I don't know whether it's ignorance, but I didn't know necessarily what I was doing on it. I just knew, as being a drummer, there were just certain things that I just wanted to try to get out of it. And the changes and the different like little combinations of things. I don't know, I just felt like you could build a song from a beat, which wasn't necessarily always the way. I mean, a lot of songs start off with chords and that, and then you put a beat on it. This was a case of actually doing the beat first and then figuring out musically what it should be.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
So it was just kind of a different way of working, and that to me was what drum machines allowed, those tools allowed us to do.
You might have just answered like my next question, because I was going to ask you about, there's a very famous drum break in this song, which is Crazy Town. As a drummer myself, I still have to go back and replay it to count, like I get lost. I'm going to play it for you. This happens, the weird break is at 4:58. I'll play it in the actual song so you can hear it in context, because otherwise your brain's going to get real messed up. So this is Control, the weird drum break. Everyone count.
Yeah, I mean,
right
like, I'm a drummer, even I got
yeah.
lost there. I was like, oh, where's it coming back? And that is so good call.
What the hell is that, dude? You built this from the ground up, and you're like, yeah, we're keeping that. We're going to build on top, and everyone's going to know what's going on. And you're like, what the hell? I
was
love
that
it.
so
It's
that the
amazing.
club would actually just stop and be like, what's going on?
No, it was that we always wanted to have drama and emotion and dynamics. We just always wanted those elements in songs. So we weren't purposely trying to do something off, but it literally was, you know, if you count it, it still lines up. But it was just, I don't know, it was just boom.
So you performed that? There was a beat There's like something was programmed, and on top of it, you kind of added.
Yeah, some of it.
bits.
Yeah, some of it. That actually ended up being programmed like that. I performed it, but I recorded the performance of it, if that makes sense. And so as the song would go, all I would do is just switch sequences, if that makes sense.
Like different patterns.
Different patterns. I would just switch patterns.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing. A lot of times I didn't know. I would try to kind of count, like to be on an even number of measures or whatever. But a lot of times I wouldn't know. So that's why sometimes changes would happen,
But
on
you
an
left
odd
it in, and
thing
it's
or
one of
whatever.
the best parts of the
Yeah,
song.
yeah, that's kind of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I remember even on the choruses of the song, on the control, there's a snare drum that happens on the 2 and the 4. That was never programmed in there like that. So I'm playing those live. So they're a little
not
off. They're a
perfect.
little, a
Okay.
little glitchy. But we always wanted to do that. And then I mentioned pings and zings. We always put, like I hear the vibra slap in there, and you hear the and you hear like stuff like that. We always did live percussion, even with the drum machine stuff, to keep it, a human element to it, and also live cymbals too.
The bass line for this is one of my favorite bass lines on the album, and bass sounds, I should
Bass,
say,
yeah,
because it is so nasty.
Mirage.
This is the Mirage bass. I couldn't help
I mean,
but my
I
face.
feel
Yeah,
like
right.
y'all
You
invented
gotta
the
get
theme from
you gotta get the
Seinfeld.
ugly
I feel
face.
like Seinfeld heard that and he was like, I need that.
Yeah.
give me that track.
It's very bing, bing, bing,
Give me the track.
and in the mix, this is like a high point of American culture right here. Is this snippet right there?
Yeah.
I love that part.
Thank you.
Vocals. I mean, like, should we hear the bridge? We haven't heard. You guys are masters when it comes to a bridge. Yeah, got my own life. I'm gonna make my own decisions. I mean, you can hear me sing that, but why don't we hear Janet sing the bridge?
Got my own mind. I wanna make my own decisions when it has to do with my life, my life. I wanna be the one in control.
So that's you going, like, da-da.
Yeah. Yep. The other thing I noticed too in all the vocals, you hear, the headphones are so loud.
The bleed.
Yeah, the headphone bleed. Yeah, she loved the headphones like super loud.
Yeah.
So we'd always
She's
be
vibing
fighting
on
that.
it, yeah.
We'd always be fighting that on the mixes. But
Earlier in the show, you were talking about that first conversation or that first week when you were driving around, and Janet's like, when do we start? And you said, we've already begun. Well, I wanted to play that first line
yeah.
that you guys wrote for her.
Yes.
And here it is.
Got it.
When I was 17, I did what people told me. I did what my father said and let my mother mold me.
I mean, that just sums up the entire album. So
Right.
it makes so much sense that you hooking her with that, being like, that's where she
And that just came from conversations.
earned your trust.
Just from conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just conversations.
And
We
that's
just, at the end of the day, we'd just go to the studio and just kind of write. And that's where Terry would just kind of start writing stuff down. Like, remember when she said this? Remember when she said this? And start writing stuff down. So, yeah, that's where that came from.
Did that also lead to him having titles with lyrics, or just sort of ideas that, like, word clouds that kind of went together for like this story, this story, this story? Or
Definitely.
was the title thing a separate process, like after maybe a lyrical idea was developed?
It was a little of both, I think. There would be certain words that she would say or certain phrases she would say that we just would pick up on. Sometimes they'd be titles. I mean, we just write them down a lot of times as titles, and then sometimes it became part of a lyric, not necessarily a title. But yeah, it's just kind of as you get to know people, there's different patterns of speaking that they have, certain words that they like to say. And we also talked a lot about just certain songs that she really liked. She was a huge Sly and the Family Stone fan.
Yeah.
And we talked about, kind of the marriage of, funky tracks though, but with very melodic, changes and that kind of stuff. So we just it just was kind of a get to know you type of thing.
You know,
which
I'm
is
going to
great.
ask you about, since you mentioned Sly, is that where the Rhythm Nation, is that where that sample, was it her idea to like start with that, to use that sample on Rhythm Nation?
No.
No.
Rhythm Nation came because there was the concept for Rhythm Nation. We had no clue what the track was.
Okay.
I was eating at a place called Filio. It was an Italian restaurant in uptown Minneapolis. And you know how there's always music playing in the background and stuff. And I never really, and Thank You from Sly was one of my favorite songs ever, right? And I remember the song came on, and I remember just kind of acknowledging, oh, I love Sly, blah, blah, blah. But then I get back into conversation. For some reason, all of a sudden, when the break happened on that, jing, 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 I literally was like, check, please, check, please.
You just heard that loop as being.
I heard that instantly. I just was like, I got to get back to. They were like, where are you going? I said, I got to get back to the studio. And I took that loop. I put it in an AMS. It had like maybe 6 seconds of sampling in it. I just put that loop in it, and I just triggered it with the kick drum from the Lynn. I just did it. And I remember Janet walking into the studio, and when I played it, she just kind of got the look on the ugly face look, right? She got that look on her face.
That beat type
And
face.
right? And she looked at me and she said, "Is this Rhythm Nation?" I said, "I think so."
Yeah.
Wow.
And I put put the rest of the stuff on it, and that's how it became Rhythm Nation.
That's
But that's what it was. It was literally totally subconscious, just
I
hearing
love that story. And the reason why I wanted to ask you that, so it's perfect that it came up naturally, is that I'm just interested in how from Control to Rhythm Nation, the evolution of sampling, of your process, go from using, that sort of like industrial sounds that are sampled, but they're really on the floppy disk of the machine, to like, clearly your brain had already, and this happened to me personally. When I started making music, I would start to hear stuff in the world, and I'd be like, "Oh, there's a drum break I can use." Like you just hear music differently once you start to use samples. So that story, I recognized that you had obviously gone down that road as well. You had begun to think we can use samples in our music. Was there like a song or a moment where that change happened for you, where you're like, "Okay, this is part of what we do now"?
That's a great question. Well, on that album, I mean, besides on that Rhythm Nation album, obviously Rhythm Nation, but also All Right, which was the
Love All Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So All Right was the sample from Think, Lynn Collins.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. That's what that's from.
Yeah, a lot of good samples from
Funky people.
from
James
Think.
Brown.
But
Funky
when they come out of that break, it just goes after the tambourine, which everybody uses, right? The infamous James Brown tambourine, where it goes
and the woo,
yeah, right.
Yeah,
It comes out of that break, and when it comes out of the break, when the band comes back in, it goes boom, ding, boom, bing, all right, and that was the loop.
There you go.
That's it.
Your ear just picked that up.
Yes.
And you're like, we can use that.
Totally. And I started listening to songs.
That's crazy to me. I love that.
As loops, though. That was the other thing. Is once sampling started happening, I literally would listen to songs and just listen to the loop and just hear the loop.
That's a special skill, because we talked a little bit about sampling before and how you surprise somebody when your answer to their question, "What do you think about sampling?" was, "I think it's great," because that type of ear. That's why a band like, say, Daft Punk, we're big Daft Punk fans. Part of the special skill of being someone who uses samples is being able to hear a small part that can be foundational to a new piece of music that can be transformed. And it's not like taking no shade to Vanilla Ice, but sometimes if you take like a 2-bar loop, it's a little bit it can feel a little lazy, or a 4-bar loop, or whatever it is, like a very long piece.
Exactly what my son always says. He calls stuff lazy. We just had that conversation last night about that's so lazy, as opposed to like
you've
Jay
transformed
Dilla or somebody who's really right. And I said, no, to me it's not everybody can do it though. The theory
he thinks
of
all
it,
sampling is lazy.
He thinks that kind of sampling is
Yeah,
lazy.
no,
Okay.
He's just
I see.
in the broader sense, but not in the anal.
But finding that part of the song, which is not the beginning, because so many samples are like the beginning of the song, because it's easier.
That's the obvious.
Finding a very unusual section that isn't maybe where a lot of like bass content or like rhythmic content, that to me takes a special kind of
I can't agree more. I always say that Pete Rock sampling "I Love Music" by Ahmad Jamal is one of my favorite samples of all time, because it's
How did he
a
think
tiny
to use
section
that?
of the song, and he made it into "The World Is Yours" by Nas. We only have so much time, unfortunately, when we do this show. So we aren't going to do any deep dive on the stems of Pleasure Principle, Let's Wait a While, which is like such a fantastic, epic, iconic slow jam. Funny How Time Flies, which was, I love that song, but then it's also got a second part in my brain from when the Lost Boys sampled it for, I think it was the song was Renee, which is a great hip hop track for the 90s. But we are going to dive into this final song. And we have to talk about this one because it was your first #1 Hot 100 single. And that's like huge. I mean, like Luxury.
And it was Janet's first #1 too. It was Janet's.
Yeah.
It was Janet's first #1. It's Jimmy and Terry's first of 16 #1 singles.
16
I lied when
singles.
I said we weren't going to talk about your 16 because you have had 16 #1 singles, my friend.
That's hilarious. It's When I Think of You. And Luxury, what you got for us on When I Think of You?
Quick question. I read somewhere where this song was inspired by Casey and the Sunshine Band. Is
That's
that true?
crazy.
What's
That's
what's
very
going
What's
on
the
true.
story there?
Very true. I'm a huge Casey and the Sunshine Band fan.
Yeah.
I think their rhythm section was probably one of the greatest rhythm sections, and actually is the I would call it the foundation of New Jack Swing.
Wow, I can
What?
almost see
Okay.
it.
Well, I actually interviewed Teddy Riley for my show, and I asked him that. I said that was my theory, and he said, "Why do you think that?" And I said, "So the song I Get Lifted,
Yes. Which is a cover.
Yeah, George
Which is-
McRae.
Yeah, George McRae did it first.
but Casey and the
But he wrote
Sunshine
it.
Band produced it and wrote
Yeah.
it."
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. So when you hear on all of Teddy Riley's stuff, right?
Yeah.
Right? I said, so my thing is, I think that was the foundation. And he laughed and he said, okay, you know what's even crazier? He said, what was my first big hit? And I said, I won her.
I
Key
wanna-
Sweat, right?
I want that girl.
The bass line, boom, 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 boom,
No
boom,
way.
boom. That's the way I like it. Casey and the
That's the
Sunshine Band.
That is not not
Okay.
an accident. Wow.
Yeah.
Those songs
So
still
that's
hit every
crazy.
now and then.
Oh
I
man,
never
noticed
Casey and
that.
the Sunshine Band, I'm telling you.
I just dollar bin bought that George McRae record like
Yeah.
literally a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Like so good.
It's so good.
It's so good.
But Casey and Rick Finch, his partner, writing partner, the production partner, amazing. And the guitar player, I can't remember his name. But the guitar player on that, the secret of those records to me was the guitar player. Because if the drum beat and the bass lines were the simplest bass lines
yeah.
you could ever write, ding, ding. It was very Cool in the Gang, is what it was. Right? It
Yeah.
was just the simplest bass lines. But listen to
Okay.
I like to do it. Listen to, I'm trying to think. Oh, the beginning of I'm Your Boogeyman, before the song actually kicks in.
Wow.
Okay.
Listen to the guitar riff.
Oh man, I can't wait to hear it.
Maybe we can play a little snippet of that.
Oh my God.
For the
It's
listeners
like-
right now.
It's like crazy.
And it's got a little bit of that swing to it.
It's totally got, it's this thing. So my thing on When I Think of You was that same kind of feel, because simple bass line, boom, 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 boom. And everybody always said, tighten up. And I said, no, it's not tighten up. That wasn't the, because I love Tighten Up, Archie Bell and the Drum.
Right.
Yeah.
I
great
love
song.
that song, but that wasn't the thing. It was literally Casey and the Sunshine Band. It was that kind of feel that those records gave
Yeah.
you. It
Yeah.
was just very kind of a floating.
Sunshine.
Yeah,
It's really letting the
sunshine,
in,
happy.
yeah.
But
That's
to the
what
New
it
Jack
was.
swing feel specifically, there's a little bit of a pause before,
Yeah.
like a little bit of a ding ding ding. It's not quite jazz, but like
Yeah.
that's what that is. It's not straight eighths,
Exactly.
right? Just a little bit of a
Yeah, a
swing
little
to
bit of
it.
that for sure. And
That's
I
awesome.
asked
never
Teddy,
made that
was
connection.
he influenced at all by Nasty? Because to me, Nasty was the first New Jack Swing song, just in my opinion. Not necessarily New Jack Swing song, but the first one to kind of have that kind of upbeat thing.
You'll be glad to
with
know
this-
there's a musicologist on Wikipedia who agrees with you.
Yeah. Okay. No,
You
but
always want to have the musicologist. Though.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the musicologist
that's not for the
signs in.
Grammys.
Yeah.
It's for the nerds.
But no, but he said he wasn't. He said that didn't really. But I remember being. Sorry to go off. I remember being with Babyface in L.A. at this club called Carlos and Charlie's, and I Won Her came on, and I remember I said, "Ooh, what is this?" Because the little reminded me of Nasty, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think L.A. said, "Oh, it's Key Sweat," and I said, "Oh yeah, Key Sweat." I said, "Oh yeah,
Keith
this
Sweat,
is
the
cool."
stockbroker.
Yeah. Right. I said, this is cool. This is cool. And then Babyface said, no, the dude that did the record, Teddy Riley, you got to check him out. And I said, oh, Teddy Riley. And that was, so Babyface was the first one that said the name Teddy Riley to me. And I've been a fan ever since.
Let's hear some synths from the song that the Jacksons themselves knew would be the biggest hit.
They knew it.
You played this song. You played the whole
I
album.
played the
for them?
whole album for him, and they all said, what's that one song? And I'm like going, Nasty?
Yeah.
No. What have you done for me lately? No. Pleasure Principle? No. I said, what song are you talking about? The song with the piano in it. I said, oh, When I Think of You, that's going to be number one.
And they
Oh
were
my God.
right.
What?
And
Yeah,
let's
they
hear
were
some
right.
of that piano.
Mirage piano.
Mirage.
I'll add some stuff in gradually.
Mirage horns.
Play this part till the end. So those Mirage horns, those are samples, obviously, right? Those hits, those horn hits
Yeah.
are samples.
Sampled
From the
floppy
library.
disk Mirage.
Yep.
Literally, the piano sound, the horn hits. The little marimba sound is DX7.
DX7.
And the
okay.
bass line is DX7.
And then there's also some guitar. Terry plays guitar in this
Terry
one, right?
plays guitar on it because we didn't have a guitar player. We couldn't find a guitar player and we needed to finish the song.
You're still looking for the female guitar player, it sounds like.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But I don't think this entire part that is in the stem is what's used. I think some parts are muted, right? So when I play
Yes,
this,
yeah. I mean, that's very...
So here's the remix, the live remix on the fly. And if you really want those 808s, but
Yeah.
that didn't exist, those 808s you were saying.
No,
You
we
just
put that
used
in.
those-
We did that for the single. So when
Right.
on the single, we wanted to spice it up a little bit because radio
On the
had already
12-inch,
played.
probably.
Yeah.
Well, the radio had already played it a ton,
Mhm.
and at that point, we were just like, let's put it. And then we did a different intro because we started with the 808 on the remix.
Mhm.
Started with the 808, and then we had this little bell line that went boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Remember that? So that's what we did, just to have something a little special, for radio to play. So it didn't burn out.
It wouldn't be a conversation about control if we didn't hear a little bit more of Janet's vocals.
Let's hear
hear
Janet.
some Janet on When I Think of You.
Ooh, baby. Anytime my world gets crazy, all I have to do to calm it is just think of you.
Such a great delivery too. She
Yeah.
seems so confident. I also love this big harmony stack that I love to build harmony stacks, so let's do that now.
When I think of you, so in love,
Huh.
ooh, so
Is that you
so
in there?
love.
Are you
That
in there?
sounds like
In
it sounds
love
more
with
like
you,
Terry, maybe.
So
Okay.
in love, ooh, so in love, ooh, so in love, so in love with you, so in love. Break.
And then this part, you got to listen to this part. What's going on here?
Oh, we're all just standing around the mic, I think.
Is this like Fat Boys? Like, are you beatboxing?
Right?
But here's the best part coming up. Okay, I got a question. We're going to talk about the blap, and we're going to talk about the blap.
What's the blap?
Something happened because all of a sudden we hear this. What's going on here?
That's the laugh I was thinking about, though, when I was talking
Yeah.
about you hear laughter on her.
Oh,
on her
totally.
on her
I'll
songs.
play the whole thing through.
I don't know.
Feels so good.
Did somebody just like go boo or something? It seems like a very genuine blap. But
I don't remember. I honestly don't remember.
Wow. It's cool.
that's
Is
her
I
singing
don't
it.
it's a
remember.
blap. I know the laughing's in the mix. Is that?
Oh yeah,
blap in the mix?
The blap's in the mix.
Okay.
Yes. It's totally there.
Okay.
Totally there, but I can't remember
What happened?
what it was.
And this is
Inspired by
her
what?
doing it, right? Or is that somebody else? Like kind of sneaking up to the microphone and going blap. We don't know.
Wow.
This is a
Yeah, that one's we're gonna have to come back for
This is
another
mystery.
episode
We need
and
Robert.
figure that out.
The Mentalist.
Jeez. Wow.
I stumped Jimmy Jam.
I know I'm gonna talk to her today, so I'm gonna ask her.
You're gonna
does
ask Janet
she
today?
Remember? I'm asked Terry too.
Okay.
We tell them hello from us.
Yes, please
Absolutely
say
will.
hi. Hi, guys.
Absolutely will.
Just be like, hey, these two nerds. I don't know their names.
I have one more question, and this could be a mystery, but this is some of these stems say, Jimmy did this, Terry did
Yes.
this. Who is this low male vocal? Is this you or is this Terry?
'Cause when I think of you,
Terry.
That's Terry.
Absolutely.
baby,
Mr. Background, we used to call him.
nothing else
Yes, he's in the mix.
seems to matter.
Yes.
'Cause when I think of you, baby.
So beautiful.
All I think about is our love.
All I think about is a remix of this. This would be so with his vocals up here
Yeah.
and her supporting. Like that's kind of a different song, and it makes me think like you should do a
Totally, yeah,
remix.
it's definitely a totally different song.
So fun. This
No,
song is so fun.
Terry's. I always called him Mr. Background because he could blend with anybody. Like a lot of I'll tell you the background vocals on Human League.
On Humanly.
That's him.
Ooh, Human. That's
No
Terry.
way.
Yeah, he just had a very.
And apparently it's not any of the girls from.
It's not the other girls. Who's that other girl on the track?
I love that. Do you want to just quickly tell that story? It's such a satisfying.
Oh no!
story.
When we were doing Human, Terry worked with Phil Oakey, the lead singer, for like 6 days to get that vocal. He really worked hard to get the lead vocal. And so when we did the backgrounds, we used Terry, a combination of Terry and Lisa Keith, and Lisa Keith was like our secret weapon background singer for everything. And when they heard the song, the girls said, "Who's that other girl on the track?" And we said, "That's Lisa Keith. She's a background singer." I don't think we like that other girl on the track. So the next day, Phil was seeing, I think it was Joanne.
Dating Joanne, yeah, I think.
So anyway, the next day he comes back to the studio. He walks in the room and he goes, "I just have to say, I don't like that. We don't like that other girl on the track." And we looked at him like, "Huh? I just have to say, we don't like that other girl on the track."
Is he kind of winking? I just have.
He's not actually winking, but he's just kind of standing there very stiffly, like delivering a line. And after about the third time he said it, we said, "Oh, you just have to say, we don't like the girl on the track." And he said, "Yes, I just have to say." We said, we get it. Okay, cool. And we called A&M and we just said, "Hey, we're taking the song off the record." And they said, "What are you talking about? It's a single." We said, "No, either we finish it the way we want to finish it, or we're just going to take
That's
it off."
crazy because you have the first #1 single in your lives, and then
Yep.
5 weeks later with When I Think of You, and 5 weeks later, Human by the
Human.
Human League is your second
Yeah.
#1 single.
Yeah.
And then we're not going to talk about how you have 14 more #1 singles after that.
Okay.
I got to ask you because you've said a couple of times about Prince, the firing. To me, the most interesting part of that story is that apparently he called Terry and offered him the chance to come back, but you couldn't come back, and that hits home for me because I'm part of a writing team, and Bashir Salahuddin and I have done a lot of TV together, and we've worked together for 15 years. I come to this podcast as a guy who's primarily known as a comedy writer and actor, as opposed to Luxury, who's a music performer. I say all that just to say there have definitely been times that we have worked with people who got along more with one of us than the other.
Yeah.
And there was definitely one time, and I can't say his name because he's still super duper famous. He's I don't even know if I want to say if he's in the music field or in the comedy field, but to this day we sort of laugh because we're like, that dude really tried to break up the team. Like, he tried to sort of play favorites and sort of be like, hey, you're the funny one. Like, it's the same way. Like, I feel weird sometimes even asking you, oh, was that you or was that Terry?
Right.
Because ultimately it came out of the same kitchen. Like, I love how gracious you are to Terry, and I feel like Terry's got to be gracious to you. I think that's the only way a team works, because if you're at all open to the idea of somebody coming in and saying, you're the special one, it can be broken up 18 ways.
Sure.
There have been people who preferred me over Bashir. There have been people who preferred Bashir over me. And most people that we really get along with sort of understand there's sort of an unseen cooking and recipe that's going on.
And that's exactly what it is. I mean, there's people that you could ask different artists. You could ask Janet, and you could say to Janet, who does what? And she could go, well, Jimmy does most of the stuff. Terry's around, but he does some of the lyrics, blah, 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 blah. And then you could ask Usher, and Usher would go, I never see Jimmy. I know he's around, but like literally we each have our own relationships with people. And at the end of the day, it was interesting watching the Beatles documentary, because I always just assumed Lennon and McCartney were joined at the hip and everything they did was together.
Yeah.
But there's songs that were 100% Lennon's and songs that were 100% McCartney's. At the end of the day, it was Lennon and McCartney.
Yeah.
That's the way Jam and Lewis are.
Yeah.
There's songs that are 100% mine. There's songs that are 100% Terry's. But we have a 50-50 handshake agreement that we did back in 1982.
Which is so powerful.
And that's what it is. So
Right.
even if I've never heard, there's songs that I literally would come out, I'd hear them on the radio, and I go, Terry, when did you do that? And he'd go, oh, well, I did that last week, or whatever. And it'd be like, but I got 50% of it. So it takes away all of the things that you would ever nitpick about creatively. Like, that's my chorus. Well, that's my verse. Well, that was my title. Well, that's my
There's no
melody.
way to work like that.
You can't, no, because
it
then you're
won't
trying to
last.
nickel and dime, and that's not what it is. So,
And I'd even ask, and this is this is a question because I feel like Luxury and I have a partnership. Bashir and I have a partnership. Every partnership is a little bit different. Did you guys fight like brothers? Like, were you guys ever like at a total impasse where like one of us like, hey, look, this is more my project than yours. I gotta make sure it's this. Or
No.
was it always? It was never contentious.
never
In
contentious.
40-something years.
No, never contentious. Well, 50 years now. 50 years this year.
Wow.
June 17th, 1973.
Happy
That's
birthday.
the day we met.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So no, we've never, I make the distinction, it's a subtle distinction, and I think I said it at the Rock Hall. We've never had an argument, because an argument is something you're trying to win. And I never want to win at something that my partner is losing.
Wow.
Because if I win an argument against him, that means he lost an argument. So that's not right. We do have disagreements. A disagreement is something you're trying to solve. And that's the way we put it. So it's like the best way should win. Not whether it's my way or your way. What's the best way? And that's the way we look at it. So we've had disagreements, but never arguments. And as far as we naturally gravitate, Terry in a lot of ways on Janet stepped away from it because he knew we would be working on something and then they got it. And he's got other things to do. So he would step away from that and allow that to happen. And then when we would need him for something like, we need a lyric idea for whatever. And Terry would be like, oh, I got it. And just like do it, like have it. So that was the way we always worked together. And then, like I say, another
strengths and like
Yeah.
not needing to be a part of every single thing.
and same even
That's
with
kinda
Usher.
crucial.
It was funny. Usher, I remember there was a song with Usher that Usher was like, Terry, I need Jam to write me this song that's like blah, blah, blah. And Terry was like, yeah, you got it. I'll tell him whatever. And I did, and I came up with the song, and Usher loved it. He was like, oh my God, this is great. And it's like, well, yeah, all you have to do is ask. I mean, I'm here. I mean, it's not like I'm not here. But yeah, there's certain people you would ask, and you go, oh, Jimmy does everything. I don't know what Terry does. And people that would go, Terry does everything. I don't know what Jimmy does. I never see him.
I
So
can't stress enough. It's
Yeah.
obviously we are not at your level, but when Bashir and I work, like there's times when I'm in one writer's room and he's in another writer's
Yes.
room, and we'll literally confer at the end of the night, or like maybe on set, maybe in the editing.
Yes.
After it's all done, like
Yep.
I'm sitting there like, was that the best take that we got for the? Okay, so why don't we just change the storyline in the scene? Like, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that
Yes.
people don't ever see.
yeah.
So I want to ask one more question before we move on about the Prince firing. This is my own controversial take.
Okay.
This is my controversial take.
Controversy.
And I say it as a Prince fan. I say it as a Prince fan. I feel like Prince was driving the culture, throughout the 80s in just a real way. And I feel like after probably Diamonds and Pearls, there's a period where he's not driving the culture. And hip hop has come on, and hip hop is sort of the dominant driving the culture. And I don't know at what point did you ever work with Prince again after the fire? Like, did you guys work on any of the later stuff?
Well, yeah, we never worked directly with him.
Yeah.
Although when we did the Pandemonium album,
Right.
we basically took tracks that were started back in the Prince days of the
Yeah.
80s, like the late 80s, early 80s, yes. And we'd worked on those.
This goes to my point, and this is my I'm not asking you to sign off on it at all, but I'm always like, how could Prince have stayed more in the center of the culture? Because you guys stay in the center of the culture, literally from the SOS band, into the 2000s. Like, you guys are at the center of the culture in ways that, quite frankly, and again, I say this as a Prince fan, he was not. My hot take is that if he had not fired you, had sort of let you guys grow, and then circled back to you and been like, Jimmy, Terry, let's get in the studio. I think he would have stayed more on the scene. I think, you know, like, 'cause, you know, I went to a Prince concert in 1998. Like, you know, it wasn't the hot ticket in town by that point.
Sure.
And I just feel like he could have used y'all, you know, in some of those, you know, in the 90s and in the 2000s. I think you know,
so there's
you don't have to.
No,
but
but
go
there's
ahead.
well, there's so many things there. The one I will say this, Terry always used to tease Prince all the time, and he used to say that he always used to tell Prince, produce a record that doesn't sound like you.
Mm.
Prince was so kind of singular in what he did that it was hard to get out of what he did. And he was so good at it, if that makes sense.
Of course.
So I think that was
He's
part of it.
masterful at it.
He was masterful at it. And
But I think about the Bad Dance album. I'm like, I love the Bad Dance album.
Yeah.
If Jimmy and Terry had been on the Bad Dance album, it would be up there with Purple Rain. That's my own personal. I love those songs, but like I just feel like there is something that's missing, and it's almost like he's trying to at that point chase your sound a little bit. I don't know.
Well,
I'm not trying to cause any ruckus, you guys.
No, there's no ruckus in it. And at one point, you know, at one point we did. Unfortunately, he passed, but he came to us and he said, "If you produced an album on me, what would you do?" And we said, "Well, we'd go back, we go in the vault, and we grab all that stuff from the
vault,
80s,
yeah.
from the early 80s that's sitting around, and we'd start there, and then we'd make a record." And he was like, "Great, let's do that." So he wanted us to produce it.
Yeah.
So he did come back around to that, which was great. And our relationship at the end with him was
It
wonderful.
was great.
Yeah, it was wonderful. But yes, he was very.
That's the movie that Hollywood honestly needs to make. I don't know how. I think you can make it. It's not like, you know, there's certain stories that Hollywood wants to make, but like there might be bullets flying on set if you really tell the truth. I don't think that's the case with Flight Time and Prince and the Revolution and everybody else from Minneapolis. I would love to see that story be told.
Some of the people, I will say, there was definitely, because we music directed the Prince special that the Grammys did 3 years
Yes,
ago.
I remember. Yeah.
And there was a lot of PTSD with a lot of the people
I bet.
that had stuck around and had a lot of bitterness and a lot of stuff. I mean, we got out unscathed because he basically pushed us out the nest and told us to fly.
Yeah.
Terry always called it freed. He said he didn't fire us, he freed us.
Right.
That's what he said. But he was very much, Prince held on very closely to the people who he really wanted to be there. And I think it was probably a little codependency because I think he felt like these people need to be with me to excel. And I need them with me to excel.
To excel.
He didn't feel that about us.
But Prince's fatal flaw seems to be his need for control. Like getting back to this album, like that
Yeah.
word seems to define everything. All the stories are about he needs to be controlling every detail,
Absolutely does.
including what you do and what you don't do, and when you do it and when you don't do it.
Absolutely.
And that,
But he's
yeah.
good. He's good at doing it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to let people. You have to let people go. You have to let people. I always said it was funny because somebody asked about Motown, or people always mention Motown. And they go, "There will never be another Motown." And I said, I agree. There will never be another Motown. But I think the closest thing that could have maybe happened would have been if we would have done what we did under Prince's
At Paisley Park.
at Paisley Park.
Yeah.
If he had
that-
been a different kind of leader.
If he would have just said, "You guys, whatever you guys want to do, you can do it. Just do it under this." And so now everything that we do is Paisley Park. So now Janet and New Edition and Mary J. Blige and everything that we do now
Yeah.
is all in the
That would have
Paisley.
been the new. Absolutely.
That would have been amazing, and
would've
we
been
would have
fantastic.
loved that. And the Prince records, like you mentioned, would have been, I think, a lot cooler.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we are coming to the end of the episode, and there are a few more things that we'd love to ask you about Control. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to basically say, I think if you can share with us how you feel like this album in particular did change your life.
Wow, it was a total life changer. Certainly because of the success after the fact. But also because it was a proof and concept of a whole lot of things. One was moving to Minneapolis to do our studio up there rather
Right.
than staying in LA.
Yeah.
The concept of working to getting to know what the artist wanted to say rather than just giving preconceived
Yeah.
notions to them. So I think that was part of it too. Us as engineers at this point, because we basically engineered that record. We had an engineer walk out on us on the album before we did, which the one with Saturday Love, the Sherelle record. And
You walked out.
yeah, we had an engineer walk out in a disagreement. And so we had to learn how to run our studio. And it wasn't a laptop. It was like studio with tapes and patch bays and all kinds of crazy stuff. So anyway, when we recorded that record, we actually recorded Control way too loud because we didn't know. And so when Steve Hodge came up to mix it, he said, "Who recorded this?" And we were all proud. "Oh, we did. He said, "It's way too loud." And we said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Everything's in the red." And we said, "Yeah, that's the way Prince did it, you know." And he said, "Yeah, but Prince's machines were set up where 0 meant 0 on the VU meter. Your machines are set up where 0 is +6, so you're already +6 at 0.
Already.
Before I even get to the
Yeah, and we said, "Well, can you save it?" And he said, "Yeah, it'll be fine." He said, "But the next album, I'm going to teach you guys how to record. I'm going to come up and teach you guys how to record." And the next
Steve
album
did
was
that?
Human League.
Oh, wow.
The next album was Human League. So, yeah. But anyway, so for a lot of reasons, yes, Control was life-changing. Obviously, a lifetime friendship with Janet. She's godmother to my oldest born son. We're just, we're as close as we can possibly be, way beyond work.
And I
So,
think
yeah,
that's a
groundbreaking for sure.
That just goes to show. I think just being in the room with you today. If it's not coming through to the listeners, just you get the sense it's just a good person. You get the sense. I think the word you used was humble.
Yeah, generosity too. I feel a lot
there's
of
so much generosity, and we've been in some rarefied spaces. We've been around some unique, very very talented but difficult individuals. You are not that. You just seem to be just this really gifted, amazing, talented person who also happens to be like a sincerely cool guy. So we can't thank you enough, sir, for coming through the podcast today.
Well, I'll say thank you for having me. But I will say that when we were working with Michael Jackson, I remember Michael said to me, he said, "How do you want to be remembered?" And I said, I thought about it for a second, and I said, "I want to be remembered as a nice guy." And he said, No. For all your #1 records or your, all your hits. And I said, "No, I just want to be remembered as a nice guy." No. For your, this and that. And I said, "No." I said, "Listen, Michael, that's all statistics stuff." I said, "That doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, that's cool, but it doesn't really mean anything." He didn't get it. So fast forward about a year later, we had sampled, I think, Billie Jean or something for something. And they said, "You'll never get it cleared. It'll never get cleared." And we were like, "Okay, cool." So anyway, I called Michael and I just said, and it was funny because I remember my office, there was a girl, Sue, that worked for us. And Sue never came back to my office. She always would just sit up front and just intercom, right? She comes back to my office. She goes, "Michael Jackson's on the phone." I said, "Okay." And she says, "No, Michael Jackson's on the phone." I said, "Yeah, I heard you." She said, No, not somebody calling for Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's on the phone." I said, "I got it, Sue. I got it right. Michael, how you doing?" "Great. He said, "I know you want to ask me something, but can I just say something?" And before you ask me, I said, "Yeah." He said, "So people always ask me what it was like working with you." And I just say, "Jimmy Jam was the nicest guy." And I said, "Exactly, Michael." And I said, "The cool thing? When people ask me what it was like working with you, I tell them the exact same thing." He said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Oh, that's so nice. What did you need?" I said, "Well, we sampled Billie Jean." "Oh, just call John Branca. I'll tell him to take care of it and whatever. And everybody's like, "How'd you get that cleared?" And I said, "I guess I'm a nice guy." So that at the end of the day doesn't mean I'm not going to get along. Doesn't mean we're not going to disagree on things.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean any of that. I just think nice, kind, all of those things. To me, I wasn't born with it. I was raised like that between my parents, maybe. And probably some of Minnesota nice kind of sneaks into there.
Hey.
But I just think, I don't know. I mean, to me, that it doesn't take any more energy to be positive than it does to be negative. And a lot of people wake up looking to be offended. Like they almost wake up with an attitude like, what's going to offend me today? Or who am I going to talk about today in a bad way? I wake up and I go, whose life can I make better today in some way, in some little way?
I would
That's why
be remiss
that's why
if I didn't thank you like very profusely for the fact that you Instagrammed me. And our conversation begins with you saying, "I like your breakdowns," but I was nearly in tears thinking, oh, that's a bit much. But like, it was one of the most moving things as an artist that the next thing you said was, I think I got into you and you named one of my songs because of my song, "I Need You." And I was like, I can't believe that you've heard of me for anything but for my music. And like, it was very, very meaningful and moving. So thank
I
you
just
very
think
much
it's
for that.
important. Yeah, and so it's cool because it talks about why we're here today. It's because if I see something, I don't like to leave things unsaid. We talked a little bit about Prince earlier. There were so many things that I felt like I didn't get to see or I didn't get to say to Prince. And I've always tried to make it a point when I see something that I like from somebody, I let them know it. If it's a DM or whatever, I don't even know whether they're going to ever read it or whatever, but I want to let people know when I enjoy something that they're doing. And that's how we met initially and then how we
Thank you.
met.
Thank you for being so generous.
The best way. I think that's one of the main reasons, other than your God-given talent, that you literally, you and Terry, you guys go from, you know, the band-driven R&B of the you know, late 70s, early 80s, all the way to the present. Almost nobody else can brag that. And I think that we just are very grateful to a very nice man known as Jimmy Jan. Thank you so much for coming through today. Let's give him a round of applause,
Thank you,
everybody in
Jimmy
the
Jan.
studio.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And
Appreciate it.
Luxury, as always, help me in this thing.
Well, I'm producer, DJ, and songwriter Luxury.
And I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ, Diallo Riddle.
And this is One Song. We will see you next time.